there is a plant that grows up to 8 feet tall, yields 4 entire harvests a year, and makes a fabric that is literally 8 times stronger than wool.
Yeah, and for centuries, we basically just forgot about it.
Right. But today, the world's biggest luxury brands and like all these activewear startups are in a quiet, desperate race to get their hands on it.
Absolutely desperate.
So if you love to learn how the world actually works and you like staying ahead of the curve, you are going to find today's topic absolutely fascinating. Our mission today is to unpack a comprehensive guide we received on sourcing sustainable textiles. And we are going to focus entirely on how this single ancient plant is experiencing just a massive modern renaissance.
It's a renaissance that is happening entirely out of sheer survival, honestly. Because if you look at the source material we are pulling from today, the reality check on the global textile industry is, well, it's grim.
Yeah, grim is a good word for it.
We only ever see the finished shirt hanging in our closet, right? We don't see the underlying supply chain, which is currently a sustainability crisis of just epic proportions. Let's just look at the two titans of the industry. So cotton and polyester.
Okay.
Cotton takes up only 2.5% of the world's arable land, yet it consumes an astounding 16% of the world's pesticides.
See, that is an incredibly disproportionate amount of chemical load for such a tiny footprint of land.
Right.
You are basically looking at an agricultural disaster zone just to make a standard t-shirt.
Exactly. And, I mean, the alternative isn't any better. Polyester is essentially a petroleum refinery masquerading as fashion.
That's a great way to put it.
It is entirely petroleum-based, it sheds microplastics everywhere, and it's non-biodegradable. When you combine those raw material issues with conventional dyeing processes, the ones that dump toxic heavy metals into global waterways, the industry is just hitting a wall.
But consumers are finally waking up, right? Like, the data in our sources points out that conscious consumers, especially across North America, Europe, and Australia, are actively fighting back with their wallets.
Oh, absolutely. The demand for certified sustainable textiles is growing by 12 to 15% every single year.
Right. And premium apparel brands are feeling that pressure directly. They are actually willing to pay a 20 to 40% premium for a fabric that has a real verifiable sustainability story.
Because they know they can pass that value on.
Yeah, exactly. They are desperate for an alternative that doesn't ruin the planet, but, still performs really well, which introduces this mystery plant we mentioned at the top. The sources call it Ramie, or scientifically Bommeria nivea.
Very nivea.
I was reading through this guide, looking at the history, and I've got to say, I'm genuinely confused. Chinese and Indian textile traditions used Ramie thousands of years ago. It was heavily traded back in the 18th and 19th centuries. So why wasn't this in my closet 10 years ago? I mean, why are we only hearing about it taking over the fashion market right this second?
That is the core puzzle of this material, isn't it? What's fascinating here is that the plant itself hasn't changed at all. It is the industrial processing technology around it that finally caught up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. To understand why it took so long, you have to understand the physical structure of the plant. Ramie produces what are called bast fibers.
Right, I saw that term in the text. What exactly is a bast fiber physically? Like, how is it different?
Okay, think of a stalk of celery.
Celery. Okay.
When you snap it, you get those long, tough, stringy bits running up the length of the stalk.
Oh, yeah, the annoying strings that get in your teeth.
Exactly. Those are bast fibers.
Yeah.
They provide structural support to the plant itself. Now, compare that to cotton, which is a fluffy seed pod that you can essentially just pluck right off.
Right, much easier.
Exactly. Extracting bast fibers from a woody, 8-foot-tall Ramie shrub used to require a massive amount of manual labor. I mean, workers had to harvest the stalks, soak them to rot away the bark, and then literally beat and scrape the fibers by hand just to separate them from the plant's sticky natural gums.
Wow. So it's just prohibitively expensive to produce on any kind of real commercial scale.
Completely. Taking a raw stalk and turning it into a soft, wearable garment at the scale of modern fashion was a logistical nightmare. It just didn't make financial sense.
But something changed.
Right. Recently, the modernization of specialized mills incorporating advanced mechanical stripping and these biological enzymatic processes.
Enzymatic processes.
Yeah, enzymes that essentially dissolve those gums without any of the manual labor. It has completely revolutionized the extraction process.
So the tech finally solved the labor bottleneck.
Exactly. The technology has finally made it viable for mainstream fashion. And as an agricultural product, I mean, the plant is an absolute marvel. It's an herbaceous perennial shrub. You plant it once, and it just keeps growing.
That's crazy compared to cotton.
Right. Where cotton gives you a single harvest a year, Ramie can be harvested 3 to 4 times a year from the exact same root system.
Which means a single hectare of land yields significantly more usable fiber per year than either cotton or flax. That alone is a massive win for global land use.
A huge win.
But the performance metrics in the text are what really blew my mind. We are talking about a fiber that is 30% stronger than cotton, and as we said in the intro, 8 times stronger than wool.
It is remarkably durable. I mean, it is also highly breathable. It naturally regulates body moisture, and it contains inherent antibacterial properties.
But whenever people hear breathable natural fiber, the brain automatically jumps to a classic summer linen suit.
Naturally.
A beautiful suit that unfortunately turns into a wrinkled mess the second you sit down in it, right? If Ramie is so similar, how does it physically stack up against linen?
Well, on a microscopic level, Ramie is generally a stronger and smoother fiber than linen. It absorbs and releases moisture much faster, which is a key reason apparel brands are finding it vastly superior from modern activewear. You don't want your gym clothes holding on to sweat.
Yeah.
It also takes vibrant chemical dyes incredibly well without degrading the core structure.
And crucially, the sources note that it wrinkles less than linen. But I want to zero in on one really specific detail from the guide.
Yeah, what's that?
It claims that, unlike linen, which can stay quite stiff and scratchy, Ramie actually gets softer with repeated washing.
Yes.
What is the mechanism behind that? I mean, how does a piece of clothing actually improve the more you throw it in a harsh washing machine?
It comes back to those natural plant gums we talked about earlier. Even after modern enzymatic processing, Ramie retains tiny amounts of pectins, which are basically natural plant glues within the fiber matrix.
Okay, so there's still a bit of glue left over?
Right. When you wash the garment at home, the water and the agitation slowly break down and dissolve those residual pectins over time.
Oh, I see.
Because the core crystalline structure of the cellulose is so incredibly strong, the wash doesn't damage the fiber itself at all. It just removes the rigid glues that were holding it stiff.
So the fabric literally becomes more pliable, draping better, and feeling softer against the skin with every single wash.
Exactly. It ages beautifully.
That is the complete opposite of fast fashion polyester, which basically starts degrading the second you scan it at the register.
Pretty much.
So we have this highly durable, sustainable, soil-friendly superfiber. But hearing all these incredible traits makes me wonder about the supply chain. Like, if it is this good, who is actually growing it? Who controls the market?
Geographically, the epicenter of this modern renaissance is Vietnam.
Vietnam.
Yeah, according to the guide, Vietnam holds a virtual monopoly status on high-quality, certified Ramie today. They have over 20,000 hectares of it cultivated, primarily across the Mekong Delta, the Red River Delta, and their central regions.
Wow, 20,000 hectares.
And because of that multiple harvest cycle we mentioned, the climate allows them to ensure a consistent year-round supply from massive global brands. They never really run out.
Wait, whenever we talk about massive textile scale, China usually dominates the conversation. Did they just miss the boat on this?
Well, historically, China was the dominant player. But the source explicitly notes that China's Ramie production has declined significantly in recent years.
Why is that?
It's largely due to a combination of rising internal labor costs and strict new environmental restrictions cracking down on older, more polluting textile mills within China.
Ah, so they priced themselves out or regulated themselves out.
Basically. That decline essentially handed Vietnam the keys to the kingdom.
So Vietnam stepped in to fill the void. But this raises a major business question for me, right? Whenever I hear the word sustainable, my brain automatically translates that to prohibitively expensive.
Sure, that's a common assumption.
How does a mid-sized clothing brand source a premium, technologically advanced textile from halfway around the world without completely crushing their profit margins?
That is where Vietnam's secret weapon comes into play. It is a perfect storm of cost efficiency combined with highly modernized infrastructure. Over the past decade, dozens of mid-sized spinning and fabric mills have clustered together.
Oh, like a localized hub?
Exactly, primarily around Thanh Ha, or near the Hoi An area, and the Vinh Long province down in the south.
It sounds a bit like TSMC's microchip monopoly in Taiwan. It's not just about having the raw materials, right? It's about having an incredibly specific, localized web of highly advanced infrastructure that would take anyone else a decade to replicate.
That is a brilliant analogy, actually.
Yeah.
And those Vietnamese mills have built a massive regulatory wall around their business through certifications.
Which is huge for Western brands.
Massive. They have secured a highly sought-after combination of global standards. We're talking GOTS, the Global Organic Textile Standard.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, GOTS is essentially the gold standard for textiles. It guarantees absolutely no synthetic inputs and mandates full traceability from the literal dirt the plant grows in all the way to the finished shirt.
Correct. No cutting corners. On top of that, these mills hold OECO-TEX certification, which is a rigorous testing protocol that guarantees the dyes and finishing chemicals meet the strictest safety standards for human skin.
So it's safe to wear.
Very. They also maintain ISO 9001 for quality management and BSCI, which involves third-party audits ensuring fair labor wages and safe working conditions for the factory workers themselves.
Okay, so it checks every single ethical box.
It really does. And because of Vietnam's highly favorable labor economics, these fully certified, modernized mills can deliver finished Ramie fabrics at a landed cost that is 30 to 50% lower than equivalent European milled Ramie.
30 to 50% lower is staggering. I mean, that is the difference between a brand surviving and absolutely thriving.
Absolutely.
Hearing these incredibly low wholesale numbers makes sense on paper, but I kept wondering if these savings actually survive the real-world costs of shipping and marketing. But looking at the case studies and the sources, it turns out that marketing a product as made from Vietnamese Ramie is actually starting to carry a premium cachet all on its own.
It really is.
It is becoming the new Japanese denim or Italian leather. It is a shorthand marker of quality and ethical sourcing that consumers are actively searching for.
It entirely changes the brand's marketing proposition.
Yeah.
We see this playing out across multiple market sectors, actually.
Yeah. Like where?
Well, in premium menswear and women's wear, wholesale costs for this fabric run about $8 to $15 a meter. In home textiles, like highly durable, pill-resistant luxury bedding, it's around $6 to $12 a meter.
And the activewear sector seems to be adopting it fastest. The guide lists costs of $10 to $18 a meter for high-performance athleisure blends.
Yes.
We are talking about 50% Ramie mixed with 50% cotton, or 30% Ramie mixed with 70% recycled polyester, which actually brings up a concrete example I want to dive into. Let's look at Flow Mode.
Oh yes, Flow Mode, the London-based activewear startup. This is a perfect case study from the text that proves these theoretical economics actually work in the real world.
So Flow Mode launches in London. They want to be an ethical, sustainable brand, so they initially sourced their Ramie blends from Europe. The quality was great, but the wholesale cost was $18 a meter.
Which is steep for a startup.
Super steep. Because of that sky-high material costs, they had to price their retail items at $120 and up just to break even. They were totally trapped in this ultra-luxury tier.
Which severely limits your potential customer base. It is incredibly hard to scale a startup when your entry-level leggings cost over $100.
Exactly. But in early 2025, they completely shifted their strategy. They partnered with a newly modernized mill in Vietnam's Vinh Long province to produce a custom blend.
The 50-50 one, right?
Yeah, 50% GOTS certified Ramie and 50% recycled polyester.
And let's connect the dots on the business impact of that single supply chain decision. By moving to Vietnam, Flow Mode's landed cost dropped from $18 a meter down to $12 a meter.
Wow.
That is a 33% reduction in their cost of goods sold overnight. And crucially, they didn't lose a single environmental certification or an ounce of fabric quality.
So they're sitting on this massive pile of saved capital, and they didn't just pocket the difference, right? They took those savings and immediately poured them into a huge influencer marketing campaign.
Brilliant move.
The results literally speak for themselves. They grew their top-line revenue by 240% in just 12 months, and they expanded their sales into 15 different countries.
That's incredible scaling.
Plus, the logistics were incredibly tight. Their entire lead time from the very first email they sent to the Vietnamese mill to having the finished packaged product sitting in their London warehouse was just 15 weeks.
It is a textbook example of how intelligent, mechanism-driven sourcing can completely unlock a company's growth potential. But, of course, executing that kind of global pivot isn't without its massive logistical challenges.
Which is exactly what I want to tackle next. Because if you are listening to this right now and you wanted to launch a sustainable brand tomorrow, or you just want to understand how these global supply chains actually function behind the scenes, how do you navigate this web without falling into a trap?
The very first step is understanding the mathematical reality of landed costs.
Right.
Let's walk through a real logistical breakdown from the text. Say a Vietnamese factory quotes you $10 a meter, X works.
X word.
Yeah, X works simply means that's the raw price of the fabric sitting at their factory door. You still have to get it across the ocean. By the time that fabric actually lands in a U.S. warehouse, it costs $12.50 a meter.
Okay, so where exactly is that extra $2.50 going?
It breaks down roughly like this. About $1.50 per meter goes straight to U.S. import tariffs.
Wow, okay.
About 40 cents goes to the actual ocean freight, assuming we amortize the cost of a shipping container over a 10,000-meter order. And the remainder gets eaten up by inland transport in Vietnam, marine insurance, and drayage at the U.S. port.
Drayage, what does that mean in this context?
Carriage is basically the logistics fee to move the heavy shipping container those short distances around the actual port facility.
Oh, like lifting it off the ship.
Exactly. Lifting it off the boat, putting it on a specialized truck chassis, and driving it from the dock to a local rail yard or temporary warehouse. It seems like a minor detail, but those port fees add up incredibly fast.
So a brand has to strictly model their business for a $12.50 cost, not the $10 the factory quotes them in that first email.
Precisely.
But I have to push back on the sheer timeline here. The text clearly states that ocean lead times to a U.S. warehouse run 60 to 75 days.
Yeah, it's a long trip.
That is over 2 months of having your working capital tied up on a boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Plus, these mills demand minimum order quantities, or MOQs, of 2,000 to 5,000 meters.
Right.
How does a smaller brand manage that kind of financial risk without going bankrupt before the clothes even arrive?
This raises an incredibly important point about strategy. The guide outlines several specific mitigation tactics for smaller operations. First is a concept called fabric pooling.
Fabric pooling.
Yeah. If you are a startup and you simply cannot hit a 5,000-meter minimum on your own, you can negotiate to share container space and production runs with other smaller buyers. That way you meet those factory minimums together.
Oh, that makes total sense. It's essentially carpooling for commercial textiles.
Precisely. The second crucial piece of advice for managing risk is never scale immediately. Always run a pilot order first.
How big is a pilot order usually?
Somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 meters. You use that smaller run to rigorously test the factory's quality control, their communication skills, and your own customer's response to the fabric before you ever sign a contract for massive annual volume.
And what about the cash flow crunch? Like, do you have to wire $50,000 to a factory in Vietnam up front and just hope they ship it?
No. The global standard payment terms protect the buyer to a degree. The standard in Vietnam is a 30% deposit when you issue the purchase order to start production. The remaining 70% is only paid on the bill of lading.
And the bill of lading is the official shipping receipt, right?
Correct. It is the legally binding document from the shipping carrier proving that your specific container has actually been loaded onto the cargo ship and has physically left the port in Vietnam.
Ah, okay.
So you retain leverage over the factory until the goods are actually in transit.
So that structure definitely helps with the cash flow. But even with a pilot order and good payment terms, international manufacturing can still go totally sideways.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's rapid fire the biggest red flags and pitfalls the source warns us to avoid. Number 1 on the list is fake certifications. Can't a brand just ask the factory if they are organic and, take their word for it?
Absolutely not. Never trust a verbal promise or like a slick PDF presentation that a mill is JA OTS certified. The text stresses that you must demand the actual certification numbers and then manually verify them yourself on the official public directory at GOTS.org.
Trust but verify.
Exactly. Certifications cost these mills a fortune to maintain. If they genuinely have them, they will be eager to prove it.
Good point. Pitfall number 2, shrinkage surprises.
This is a big one.
The text mentions that because Ramie is so naturally absorbent, if it isn't handled right at the mill, it can shrink significantly more than cotton. The physics of it mean that if the factory doesn't properly pre-shrink the fabric during the finishing process, the fibers will aggressively contract the first time a customer puts it in their home washing machine.
Which leads to terrible reviews.
Right. The guide says you have to test your pilot samples vigorously and mandate in your legal contract that shrinkage must be under 3%.
Yes. And pitfall number 3 is color variation. You order a specific navy blue for your first production batch, and batch 2 shows up looking like a faded royal blue.
Oh, that's a nightmare for branding.
To prevent this, you must specify exact global Pantone or RGB color codes in your contract and demand Oecotex color fastness testing, so there's zero variation between production runs.
And the final, perhaps most critical pitfall, quality control failures.
Yes, never skip this.
Do not just trust that the thousands of meters of fabric loaded on the boat perfectly matches the tiny square sample you approved in your office. You need to freeze a golden sample, a master reference piece signed by both you and the factory manager.
Mhm.
Then you spend the $300 to $500 to hire an independent third-party inspector located right there in Vietnam. Have them walk into the factory and check the bulk fabric against your golden sample before it ever gets loaded into the shipping container.
Paying $500 upfront to prevent a massive container of defective, unsellable fabric from arriving at your warehouse 2 months later is, hands down, the single best insurance policy you can buy.
Right.
When you take a step back and look at all of these mechanisms together, it becomes clear that modern sourcing isn't just about buying fabric, it's about architecting an airtight supply chain.
So let's summarize the journey we've just been on today. Ramie really is the ultimate cheat code for the sustainable fashion crisis.
It really is.
We are talking about an ancient, highly productive plant that has been transformed by modern processing technology into a total superfiber. And its global renaissance is being entirely powered by Vietnam's brilliant combination of agricultural scale, cutting-edge certified infrastructure, and just unbeatable cost efficiency.
And that is precisely why understanding these mechanics matters so deeply to you, the listener.
Exactly.
Whether you are an entrepreneur looking to build the next breakout brand like Flow Mode, or a supply chain professional trying to optimize your global margins, or simply a conscious consumer staring at the tags on the clothes in your closet,
Yep.
understanding how materials are actually cultivated, chemically processed, shipped across oceans, and verified through global certifications, that is the only way to separate genuine, impactful sustainability from cheap corporate greenwashing.
It is the difference between buying an empty marketing slogan and buying a real physical solution to an environmental crisis, which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We opened by talking about how the modern closet is tied to agricultural disaster zones and petroleum rigs. But if modern enzymatic processing technology can unlock an ancient thousands-of-year-old plant like Ramie and finally allow it to replace toxic plastics in our clothes, what other forgotten historical materials are out there right now?
That's a fascinating question.
What else is just waiting in the archives of history for a 21st century manufacturing upgrade to become the world's next global supermaterial? Keep checking those tags in your closet and keep asking great questions. I'll see you next time.